And welcome to a Peel Yourself Off the Mat Monday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForrest. Very happy to have you guys with us after what was a fantastic, phenomenal weekend all the way around from a degenerate standpoint. We will say so long Cinderella. That was kind of the theme of the first game of the two NFL games that were contested yesterday. I texted my buddy Mike Jones after this arduous, well orchestrated fourth down conversions, third down conversions, 18 play Washington Commander drive to open up the NFL weekend as Jaden Daniels is getting pressured, but he's managing to complete passes. It results in a field goal. I'm getting 6 points with the Commanders, kind of dreaming the Man of La Mancha type of stuff to dream the impossible dream. Could this 150 to 1 preseason proposition, the Washington Commanders, actually get to the doorstep of making the Super Bowl, where you would have to ask yourself the magic Shakespearean question? If you had $100 on and had 150 to 1, because you just happen to be a fan, going all the way back to when John Riggins was running the ball for the Redskins, and he somehow slipped that tackle of McNeil of the Dolphins, ran around the end there, and won that Super Bowl for him. And you're thinking, okay, good. I'm up 9. 18 plays, 3 points as a result of the drive. You're up 9 points if you're getting the 6. And within one play, one snap, Saquon Barkley. How does Joe Shane sleep at night, the general manager of the New York Football Giants, who makes what turned out to be one of the great blunders of all time? This is like trading Nolan Ryan for Jim Fregosi, where you sign Daniel Jones to a $160 million long-term deal and you say, hey, Saquon, I got no money to pay you. Now, there's a big difference there. Saquon Barkley running behind a Giants offensive line versus Saquon Barkley running behind those beasts, those blocks of granite that the Philadelphia Eagles have, and in a better offense overall. Huge differential there. And the guy nearly sets the record. Could have easily done it if he plays that 17th game. All-time rushing yardage in a season. He's been brilliant all year long and continued to be so. And one play, and you're already out of it. And that kind of dictated the pace of the way the game was going. It got more and more precarious whether or not you're going to be able to cover the spread. And ultimately, the Philadelphia Eagles crush like a grape the Washington Commanders there with a final of 55 to 23. There were no mathematical permutations after a while that made you think, I think I can cover the spread. And of course, the other game, we recommended that you go with the Buffalo Bills. That was a bit of wishful thinking. Maybe you're looking for some kind of transformation at the top of the National Football League. The Bills, of course, famous for losing 4 straight Super Bowls under Marv Levy. I was asked a question the other day in a bar, Marv Levy, dead or alive? I went with dead. Cost me $100 there as he just celebrated. That moment, I got a flash coming on one of the sports sites that said, Marv Levy celebrates his 99th birthday. So very much alive. But the Bills, who were very alive in that game, I mean, think about it. You can't kill yourself if you had the Bills in that one. Because if this Dalton Kincaid, I didn't realize how close he came to making that catch when Spagnuolo sent the corner blitz, and you had Josh Allen throwing the ball as he was falling backwards. Shades of Eli Manning escaping 7 tacklers and avoiding a sack, and finding David Tyree, who makes a miracle catch while he's lying on his back in that Super Bowl victory by the New York Giants. One that might propel Eli Manning into the Hall of Fame. Without that, I don't know that he's such guaranteed Hall of Fame material. I'm not sure that he's guaranteed anyway, but I do believe that he's going to eventually get into the NFL Hall of Fame, largely triggered by a play that was predicated on wild luck, you would have to say. Julian Edelman bailed out Tom Brady in one of those Super Bowls, but with a miracle catch when it looked like, and I was against Shanahan many years ago in the Atlanta Falcons when Shanahan was the OC. And so it happens. You need a little bit of luck, and I think luck was certainly an element there, although you can take nothing away from the Kansas City Chiefs and their performance. We're going to get into the Super Bowl. This is a dreadful week for people in the media and doing sports talk for the many years that I did. The week leading up to the week to the Super Bowl, what was always one where you were just fishing for things to talk about. Remember, I think it was 18 years ago, it was a Super Bowl here in Miami, and the central theme was, we called it Freeney-gate. It was sort of a boring matchup. Everybody thought that the Chicago Bears had zero chance of beating the Indianapolis Colts. The game was a lot closer and dicier than it appeared to be on paper and for all of the pundits. But ultimately, the Chicago Bears weren't able to muster up much against the Indianapolis Colts. And all anybody talked about for 2 weeks, they actually strapped an ankle bracelet on Dwight Freeney, the spin move artist, outstanding pass rusher, and out of Syracuse University, who was with the Colts for so many years as a dominant force. And the condition of his ankle was the only story anybody talked about. So at least we have all of the celebrity stuff that's going on and a battle between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a rematch from a couple of years ago. So there'll be a lot to talk about. And certainly we can analyze many, many props. I, for one, happen to be one of those Super Bowl bettors that likes to have all of my tickets accounted for and cashed either one way or the other, either cashed or thrown out the window before the game starts. So I'll be parlaying the coin toss to the length of the anthem, and then we'll see how we do. We can kick back and watch the game and just go ahead and get wildly drunk as we watch other people agonizing over virtually every play. If you are betting the game, and this is the way to do it, Bet Online would be the place to go. They continue to be the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for all online betting, from the earliest odds to live betting. Now talking about, it's interesting. Last week on an interview show I do called Conversations on Bleacher Report, we actually had a guy who was a participant in the Geezers at Caesars, as Jerry Cooney joined us on the program. And that was a lot of fun. He's still very coherent and a lot of fun to talk to. You can check that out. Just Google Conversations with Jeff DeForrest, and you'll see the show features Randy Gordon, longtime boxing savant, and Jerry Cooney. But we often talk, Mike Jones and I, about being the Geezers and Caesars. He no longer is in that category. The elegant hair that he has adorning his head. If you aren't betting the game, though, Bet Online, a place to go. The largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, boxing, whatever you want to wager on. They have it. Maybe, you dabble in a little bit of soccer. A lot of people are into that. I am not. But many people are obsessed with betting 18-game soccer parlays. I play a draw in every game. That's the way I look at it. 0-0. Bet Online. The game starts here. All right, Michael. I mean, I had to eat it yesterday, and of course, I jinxed myself. You and I were in texting communication during the course of especially the first game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. I love the Cinderella story. I always do. And once again, the glass slipper fell apart relatively early for me in that ball game. An 18-play, hammer-it-out drive, dramatic conversions on third down, on fourth down from improbable positions where in the past coaches would have been horrified to even consider going for a 4th and 2 from their own 50-yard line early in a ball game. Of course, you're going to conservatively punt the ball away, see if your defense can hold them, maybe get some good field position again. Instead, they go for it, they make it, they end up with the field goal. And as I was perusing channels, looking at various other things, thinking I had a little bit of time, I turn back and I see Barkley's back as he's rolling into the end zone there on the first fucking snap. And that set the tone. So it was, once again, Jerry Glanville City, not for long. How are you, my friend?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm licking my wounds yesterday. Buffalo game was just something I couldn't get my head to go with what you see for the last half a decade, where you're just watching the best player in the league and you just don't believe he's got to lose because you're watching 18 regular games he's played before that where he just looks lethargic. I mean, I'll get into the first game because the play with Barkley, again, my phone blows up, not from you, but can you believe we got rid of this guy? What are we doing?
All you being a Giants guy.
I'm sure the listeners know that at this point that, part of my life with handicapping outside of that is being a Giant podcaster and working with the team and a longtime fan, and then the memes come up when you start seeing the people questioning Shane, should we do this? But he's just a significant. He's a great locker room kid and a significant player. But I kind of like leaning again toward the great players that we decide the game. We're going to have probably the best back in the game now, going up against the best quarterback in the game. As much as you want to make Jalen Hurts the story, the real story is, can Philadelphia keep Pat Mahomes off the field enough to maybe get a victory here? But yesterday, I'm sitting there with my loser, 2-1 yesterday, and thinking to myself as I bet this game, like, what am I doing? Even at 21-10, or they get the touchdown before the half, you just felt that the first series, Allen almost throws 2 picks, and if Kansas gets the ball, like things were going the way they always go. And then you start thinking, why am I betting against this guy? I keep bragging to people that this guy's the best quarterback I've ever seen play the game. He didn't get beat on any decisions. He ran 2 touchdowns where guys have chances to light him up and don't light him up. And it's like what you watch is like, this is where this league goes. Do they want this? It's the Floyd Mayweather situation. We all hate to watch the Chiefs win, so we're going to bet against them and do what we want to do. But yet all they do is win. Yeah, and Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo put on a clinic, especially on the last 4th down play, which I've analyzed with numerous people. How even though Dalton Kincaid drops the pass, it's just, you feel bad for Allen. And like Lamar Jackson the week before, played a good game but lost, doesn't win a big one. And Allen's in the same situation. Did he play a bad game? Absolutely not. Would I question the push-tush play, which I thought got a real eye-opener when the first game when they almost awarded Philadelphia a touchdown?
It's good about that. I've been following sports, nearly 70 years. I was a fan from my first cognizant memory at 4 and 5 years old. I didn't know that was a rule, that they could award the team a score if the other team egregiously just continues to do the same thing and cause and be guilty of penalties in that spot. I'd never heard of that before. Had you?
No, and it was fascinating because I'm watching it going from a gambling standpoint perspective that it's really Washington's last chance. But each time they restart the clock, so I'm like, this guy keeps doing this. They're going to let 2 minutes go off the clock. Does it. But when I heard the referee stop this and say that's it, and I'm like, wow, that's really crazy. But I think what Frankie Louis was doing in that situation was he realized he had no chance of stopping the play. But there's set a precedent to me that I think this play has to be evaluated. Are you allowed to push the quarterback? Like, I don't mind running a sneak, but can you sit there and lift your player into the end zone? Maybe the league should reevaluate that and maybe make the play a little bit fairer for the defense. But then you go to the second game, and the Bills do it, and they're 1 for 5. So it's not an automatic. The Chiefs were anticipating the snap counts. Allen blew a 2-point conversion after they had an extra point because they got an offside penalty and went half the distance. Takes the point off the board, which you question at the end of the game what would have happened there. It's just these games we sit and analyze them. If we're watching 16 of them on TV, we miss this stuff. But when it's polarizing when you get down to that week, like you said, the best week. It's a fantastic week of football to go watch the championship games, and we had a great one in the second one.
You couldn't kill yourself and beat yourself up too badly if you backed the Buffalo Bills or recommended, which I did. I don't remember.
Yeah, I did too.
I think you were on the same side. Take a shot with the Bills, getting a couple of points under the auspices of they definitively have a chance to win a game outright. Seem to be finding a good rhythm in the postseason, which we've seen them fail prior to getting to the conference championship games a couple of times. It's always Mahomes that is the culprit and the nemesis of Josh Allen. But Josh Allen made a good account of himself.
Yep.
And as I said at the beginning of the show, I mean, look, Spagnuolo has done this throughout the season, and I don't know that we're going to see Vic Fangio do the same type of thing. Fangio very reluctant to blitz. Spagnuolo will send somebody in an improbable spot when most teams will be laying back and trying to protect against a 10-yard game. Spagnuolo sends a corner blitz, which flushed Josh Allen a little bit out of the pocket. Then the other rushers were able to get to him. He's falling backwards. It looked like that Eli Manning, David Tyree play to me.
Very similar.
Throws a pass where, never mind a rule that we hadn't heard of before about awarding the team a score. I thought they were going to invoke the infield fly rule on that thing. And yet, when you look at it, Kincaid actually has a better chance of catching that ball than David Tyree did of kind of distinguishing Eli Manning's career with a catch that was as improbable as any from a guy that was as unlikely a source of that reception as anybody. And Kincaid, literally, it hits him in the arm, sort of in the clear. It wasn't like there were guys draped all over him. He kind of fell in a spot where blindly this ball arrives right at the time that he's diving for it. Could have easily made that catch, and then the whole game swings another way. And then, of course, as you mentioned, you never, as a bettor, like to see a team take points off the board. And now I know the dynamic on the scoreboard from the 1-yard line. You're thinking, okay, we moved this to a field goal game right before they are nearing halftime. Mm-hmm. And that puts us in a very favorable position. But chasing points early in the game, we've seen it backfire, and it really blows up in the face of bettors like an exploding cigar, because then it subsequently led to another necessitated 2-point conversion try by the dynamics of the scoreboard, which they didn't complete. And failed on that attempt. And so there you go. There's 2 points off the board in a 3-point game. and you would have come up a winner. So I don't know that you can feel like you need to jump off the pier there with cement shoes on.
Yeah.
If you had the Buffalo Bills, I mean, you certainly weren't. It's like a horse that gets in trouble in the stretch and misses by a nose hair. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't think you need to question yourself as a handicapper if you had the Bills in that game. But it is amazing because the one question that you always have to ask yourself, and it seems like the answer is always in the affirmative, is Patrick Mahomes somebody that you never want to bet against in these spots? And I believe if you track the history against the point spread, he may be undefeated in these
He
situations.
is under 3 point favorite. He is at home, and it's amazing. But
Yeah.
you just got to look at those numbers, and you sit there and you try to. This was the best shot I thought Buffalo had. Let's analyze it. 29 points with the last drive down 3 with a chance to win. You take that at kickoff every time. You say I'll take my guy with a chance to win. But then you see the betting line. The live line is minus 325 Chiefs to win. So you're saying it's a less than 3-1 shot that he does make this play and make this win. Would it be the same line if it was the other way around? It seems like Mahomes finds his ways to win. There's just I always say this: the pressure at these moments become bigger and bigger as social media and guys like us who have forums are able to talk about it, and everybody's going to hear it and listen to it, and someone's going to get a new idea and roll with it. And in this particular case, if you look at that play, fourth down play, it's like Spagnuolo knew where he was going. The blitz came right to where he was rolling. He caught the ball, looked up, and the guard missed 2 guys coming. Two guys come clean. Your play's bundled. If the guard picks up one of them, maybe that extra split second, Allen can see Shakir in the flat for a 25-yard gain to his left. He runs a motion behind him and then goes to his left. He's wide open. Look at the ceiling view. He's got a guy blocking downfield. He could get 30 yards, might even score. And then the other play, it's a running back on the outside that the corner blitzed on, a guy not normally lined up in that position. He cuts across. If he stays right where he is, Allen dumps it off, and the guy runs for 10 yards, and you get a first down. It's these little innovative things in coaching and tendencies that they watch. We don't watch as amateurs watching the game that the Chiefs pick up. I mean, you got to put Andy Reid and Spagnuolo in these cases of all the great coaches that we're seeing in history. But like every great coach, you need that elite player. Phil Jackson isn't where he is without Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and Shaq. He doesn't win the 9 titles. Does Pat Riley win without Jabbar and Shaquille? Does Belichick win without Brady? Red Auerbach win without Bill Russell. So when you win these titles, it really is about the players, but how you get them to that point. And I think what Andy Reid and Spagnuolo does and makes me like them a little bit in the Super Bowl right now, because I'm hearing, the guys are sitting there, how can you beat this team? Are the same old guys. But it's that other kind of guy who's saying, oh, Philly's got more talent. Philly's the better team. They're going to beat them. They're going to run the ball down their throats. They can't stop that offense. Well, we're going to see what happens in 2 weeks, which should be a really good game.
Kansas City installed first as a 1.5-point dog. I think that line has already climbed to 2. I mean, favorite. That line has already climbed to 2
Right.
in favor of Kansas City. In spite of the fact, I mean, Philadelphia was overwhelmingly impressive to me from a variety of angles. Number one, the narrative all week was how compromised, how impeded would Jalen Hurts be with his knee injury, which appeared to be not necessarily the level of severity that we saw the hamstring turned out with Novak Djokovic in the Australian Open, which is another remarkable thing because had we known this guy had a blown hamstring, would we not have bet on the possibility that he was going to retire? And he still almost wins a set against the number 2 player in the world who was playing very well. So some of these guys are just remarkable in regard. I think Hurts, literally, I mean, befitting his name, has been sort of banged up one way or another all year long.
Right.
And he goes out and has a remarkable game, and people are talking about Barkley and Hurts with the 3 running touchdowns each. Certainly Barkley's were maybe of a more spectacular variety. But Jalen Hurts passing in this game, especially on the field of A.J. Brown, was particularly impressive for a guy that was supposed to be compromised by injury.
Yeah. One of the guys that I deal with very regularly in betting, and we discuss games all the time, he's on the Picks for Profits, the handicapping system, gets into the psychological angle of betting more than he wants to hear numbers. If you give him a guy who's 11-0 in his last 11, he's going the other way. So he thinks that the numbers don't mean anything. It's more the psychological part. And his big bet yesterday was Jalen Hurts over 182 and a half yards, which we talked about on Thursday.
Yes.
It ended up going off at 198 and a half, and he ended up getting it at 195 and a half, and he was mad at himself that he didn't bet it earlier. And we're like, why you figure it out? His thought process was, is Hurts really that hurt? Everybody thinks he's not that good. Everybody thinks he's not playing. Everything's about Barkley. And his philosophy was, you know what? They're going to put 9 men up in a box to try to stop Barkley, and it's Hurts is going to have the openings with their receivers, and they're going to change up the game plan because nobody thinks Hurts is it. And he goes, Hurts is a great kid. He doesn't do anything wrong. He's like using all this crazy analyzing. I'm like, what? This is what you're coming up with? Yet he wins his bet. Yet he wins his bet. And he calls me up to say, told you, you know, he's bragging about it. And I'm like, good handicapping, because they found that that's what these games do. They're going to see, they find something that no one's really figuring. And that was one. Where would Hurts come up with a game like this? And he had a really good game yesterday.
And I love the fact that you've made this vital transformation, veritable metamorphosis from a guy. And we were talking about this last week on the show. I mean, it used to be you try to decide the side versus the point spread.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you go on the money line and then the over under, which the over number was destroyed, especially in that first game with 88 points in total being put up on the board. But you're like Jacques Cousteau now. You get into the game and you put on the mask and an aqualung and you dive into this in-game betting proposition stuff. So how did you make out? You were texting me things during the course of the game. I'm thinking, what the fuck is this guy talking about?
Okay, so I bet the Commanders plus 16 and plus 17 and a half, which I lost. But in the second game, I ended up taking props where after the game comes on, I'm looking at a feel for a game. I won James Cook over 51 and a half yards, bet him again at over 54 and a half, and he broke that 33-yard run, which won that game. And Xavier Worthy, when the corner goes down for Buffalo, I'm looking at this kid Elam who looked a little off balance, like the pressure of the moment, you know, like all of a sudden they're throwing balls in front of him. I'm like, if this guy gets lined up against Worthy, you know, we'll see what happens. And Worthy hits a couple plays. He's 3 for 35 yards. And then I look up and he's only 52 for the game. And it's in the second quarter. I'm like, this guy can break a play anytime. Hit that prop. So there's just, they're giving you so many different angles to bet, which again is different than when we grew up and when we were digging in, that it was really kind of safer for the handicapper, you know, like us, that we could concentrate on a few things. But if you really look and you analyze a game and get into it, there are a lot of guys who are veteran guys who kind of like this live, all this different type of live stuff. If you see something, you can go. Now, you don't want to make 40 bets, of course, because the juice will kill you, but you got to find some certain things that you might see over a course of a game that might work for you. And those two worked for me yesterday, just in watching the game and seeing a flow of a football game. And those were two I hit yesterday. But I did lose the Commanders thinking. But I picked Philly there, so it's kind of like more of a hedge type thing that I was doing, which giving money back, which is always not a great thing either. But I have fun with it, and I think more importantly, it gets to the younger viewer. If we're going to try to educate and help people bury their bookie, let's maybe look at some other ways to do it that might be a little bit easier than sitting there and analyzing and walking away. Because, I mean, I thought the 3 points that Philly gave up before the half, really thought that Washington would have been able to maybe get
We're optimistic. They get the ball to start.
Yeah, you just think you've seen so many of these games, and probably if I'm 22, I don't even think about that bet because I've been betting 3 years. But betting for 40 years, you're thinking, how many times did I lose this game up 12 points, and the team came back and beat me? And I'm like, hey, I mean, I'll give you another great analogy on this too. Friend of mine, same guy, bets Hurts, calls me up. He goes, "What do you think of the halftime?" And I said, "I kind of like watched it." He goes, "Well, I got a big number on Philly on the money line." And I'm like, yeah. He goes, "What are you going to do?" He goes, I said, "Well, why don't you bet Washington over the team total 10.5 because you can only win both." He goes, "You can't lose your bet. If Washington comes back from down 12, you win your second half bet automatically." And he's thinking about it. And he actually calls me up right before kick and said, "I took the cash buyout for a little less than half the bet." I said, "What? What did you do?" And I said, if they put that out, that's only a bet. He did it to Hard Rock. It's only a bet that they're benefiting mathematically. I said, it's analytics. They're trying to bail out. He goes, "Yeah, but I had such a big number on it. Now all I could do is worry about Jalen Hurts going over. Then I have a winning day." So he analyzed it like he took the buyout, which is a completely different angle that you never would have saw.
No.
But when in New Jersey, I would hear a lot of guys were doing this. When New Jersey opened up in 2018 and offered it in their books, people were doing it. If a guy was down 14-0 and he was down, he had a $1,000 bet and they settled with him for 850, he would say, I'll lose the 850. Most likely I'm losing the game. Hey, I saved $150. That's what he would say. He wouldn't even care about the comeback. He'd say I saved it. So there's a lot of different ways of doing this, angling, betting. You know, I didn't bet any props straight up this weekend. You know, I just did the in live betting props that Hard Rock offered. And it's just a different way of betting. And I think the young guys that are betting today through fantasy sports and how DraftKings and FanDuel brought that to the forefront, and they're the leaders in gambling, you know, today, you know, on an app. I think that's where people are turning to. So I see a lot of books taking a lot of action on these, you know, live betting and props. So it's
Very few new developments being generated by casinos and or bookies, in this case, which are also casinos as well, are designed in favor of the players. That's always been a theory of mine. I mean, when it came out with Caribbean stud poker, you're thinking very few new table games are favorable to the players. They want you to get away from the games that you actually have a remote shot of winning in,
right.
a very low percentage, and go into these games where it's you know, highly advantageous for the
Right.
house to have you sit down at the table and say, "Would you like another martini, Mister DeForrest?"
That was the easy way to get me to play. Give me another free drink.
Yeah, just have a few drinks. All right, preliminary perusal here of what you're seeing and sensing. I remember a couple of years ago, I was in Atlantic City for the Philadelphia Kansas City game. I'd been invited to a Super Bowl party there. They had the cheesesteaks on one side and the barbecue with that sweet sauce on the other side. And of course, a stronghold. I mean, an hour away from Philadelphia by car. And many people from Philadelphia, huge Philadelphia influence there in Atlantic City. Naturally, the Eagles were the overwhelming choice of the people. And I think I wasn't, you know, I'm not the type that's going to wear like a Chiefs jersey anywhere, even if I lived in Kansas City and go to a game. But I very subtly was kind of hiding in the background there. And as the Chiefs were getting buried in the first half, and you saw the Philadelphia Eagles fans are just running to the windows to ante up and double up and press their bets. I was thinking, you know what? Just judging by the way this is going, I'm thinking I'm in a favorable position. And I was one of the two or three guys that was online cashing after that Super Bowl in that particular area. But here's a rematch. The teams are a little different in terms of their configuration. Mahomes is certainly nobody that you ever want to bet against. I mean, you have to do some convincing there and come up with some deductions that maybe go counter to all of the trends as we've seen. What's your feeling? I mean, are you inclined? I was very, very impressed with what Philadelphia did yesterday against the Commanders.
Yes.
They destroyed them.
Mm-hmm.
And yet Kansas City did its thing, as they've been doing all season long. I mean, they had the one loss besides that last game, which we're going to go ahead and give them a pass-through on. So essentially 15-1. We're in trouble against the Broncos there, block a potential game-winning field goal. End up against the Raiders, a team that wasn't of much distinction this year, and sort of luck out and get a win in that one. They could have been tagged with a couple of other losses. Seem to have a little bit of vulnerability this year, much more so than in previous championship seasons, like the last two. What do you think? I mean, what's your original lean and instinct? Mike?
Okay, so the line comes out at -2, and the money line was -1.25 last night. So
Okay.
you buy a point, you take it down to 120, and it's 1.5, and then it's 130 at 1. So I thought the value was the Chiefs money line last night at -1.25, and I took a small bet on that just because, again, I just find that, you know, I don't know that they win the game. The bet was just basically for the numbers there, thinking it might go up a little bit more, see where people are with this. I could have guessed the wrong side, but that was my play. This is a really interesting game and a tough game. And now I think I've talked about this before, the pressure was on Lamar Jackson, the pressure was on Josh Allen yesterday. This might be the first time in a game I might see pressure on Pat Mahomes to be the legendary, to go with the first guy ever to win 3 straight. So if there's pressure on a game, I think it leans a little bit more toward Kansas City, which makes this fascinating at this point, that now the pressure's on Mahomes to kind of be that first guy ever to win 3. So that's interesting. You know, there's a love-hate thing. Boy, do I want the guy to get a ring. I wouldn't mind it, but boy, I don't want to see it on the Phillies ring. But I would deep down in my heart, I've come to realize that it's over. Barkley's never going to wear blue again. You might as well if you like the kid, you might as well see him get a ring.
Got to root for him with his new team.
Yeah, there's some pride in me to, you know, that wants to make the Giants even feel worse, their front office, that they gave away a guy and gave him a Super Bowl. So, you have all these different edges. But I think, to me, this is a waiting game. I think I want to see where the line goes, where the public is. I think the big key factor to me are the two important injuries on the offensive line for Philly. Juergens, who came in and had to play in the second half, that wasn't planning on playing, but Landon Dickerson went out. Where's his ankle? Where's his leg? So I would think it's one of these things where you watch the injury report, who's nicked up, who's hurt, 2 weeks to heal. I might wait till next week before I make a decision, but my initial bet was just the money line Chiefs, thinking what I saw yesterday. There's such an edge at quarterback in this game, and you hate to say it. I know Philly's got some great players and their defense and their lines and all that, but God, is 15 so good. And I think he puts himself in this echelon. At 29 years old, he can win his 4th title. Tom Brady was 29 in 2007. That was the year the Giants beat him. Do I think Mahomes is a better overall player of the position athletically and making minds? I think yes. He just seems to do so much at certain times. And this is the game for me. I think he's going to put himself right with questions. The people that think Brady's 7 Super Bowls are that equivalent that will never be touched or whatever. He did it over a 20-something, 25-year span. This kid has a chance to win his 4th and unprecedentedly go to 5 and 6 years. I mean, this is remarkable run he's on. This is a real dynasty in sports, in the sport of pro football. That's what's on the line here. So I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, no, going to be a lot of fun. And I don't think that first week of the two will be as boring and bereft of storylines as, especially with the celebrity stature now about Kelsey and Taylor Swift. I don't recall who's doing the anthem. And this is one I may have to pull a Mike Jones on now because when you see somebody come out with an accompanying instrument, in other words, a country singer comes out and has like a guitar player next to him or her. Or you had, what was it? It wasn't Aretha Franklin. It was it was one of the soul singers from the past, and she comes out there. She's got a piano, and she does like a 4-minute intro. Gladys Knight.
That's right.
That's always good. I'll never forget. I was in Vegas about 30 years ago, before these bets were as popular as they are today. And I was doing a radio show up until about 20 minutes before kickoff. So I was trying to make my way from the location I was at to Caesar's Palace where I was staying. So I was going to watch the game in a Caesar Sportsbook. And you know how at Caesar's Palace they have that kind of, a thing like where a people mover type of thing like they do in the airport there. And so you're sliding and you're actually above the casino. Mm-hmm. And as I set foot on that thing to traverse my way through the casino from above, I hear this outrageous roar. I mean, the crowd is going berserk, and the place is actually shaking, man. The statues outside were shaking. And I thought, fuck, I missed like a touchdown. And it was just a reaction to the coin flip, which was great. So there'll be a lot of ways to get buried on this thing, and we'll analyze all of them in the next couple weeks here on Bury Your Bookie. All right, and you're immersed now in college basketball and all of these other things with your platform. How do people, if they're seeking the advice of the great Mike Jones, where do they go?
The Big Gunner podcast on Spotify. We'll be having a show this week. We'll throw out a few extra tidbits on the game. And that's probably the best way to get me now, the picks for profits. We were going to dip into basketball a little bit. Like tonight, I like the Orlando Magic laying the 1 at Miami, only because I just think the disarray of the Heat.
Oh, we were wrong, by the way, about that hurricane theory.
Yes.
Smacked in the face with a rogue wave.
Cal won the game in over 3. They gave up a 3 to go to overtime. And the fun part about that is that was always one of the things that you overwin. Cal's up 8 in overtime with a chance to hit a free throw to actually tie the spread at the time. I had gotten 9. It went off at 10 and a half. And I ended up losing the bet. But I'm watching the game. You could see that Miami started to figure something out. They shot over 50% from 3. So maybe we might want to lay off on those big numbers anymore.
Well, we put the Heat in that same category, though. So.
Yeah. I mean, just Orlando's never been a favorite down here. And I saw them as a 1-point favorite to getting Banchero back. And, I just I want to see the Heat.
I was surprised. I didn't even know he'd come back yet.
Yep. So it'll be an interesting game tonight. But down here, we'll pay attention to the Heat. So we'd like Orlando -1.
All right, and picks for profits. How do we find it?
Yep, that you can go get us 1 pick a day, and that's what we're doing there.
All right, beautiful. Mike, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks for getting up with us today on Bury Your Bookie. We'll talk to you again on Thursday, and we'll figure some things out. Maybe we'll have some more prop bets analyzed by then. Thanks so much for joining us here on Bury Your Bookie.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Enjoyed it.
All right, a pleasure, my friend. All right, so my weekend started out on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. They had the Pegasus Cup, which is a big deal. And it kind of, I don't want to call it riffraff. I mean, we all are part of the degenerate brethren, but I'm one of those guys that you go to the track and kind of like to hang out with the less, elegant element there. I'm at the bar and slamming down a few. Everybody's yelling and screaming. You're just hoping to dodge the people that we talked about that might be inclined to immediately hit you up for a $20 or $100 and say, "Oh, I'll get this back to you." And you're like, I know you're never going to fucking pay me, so just go away. And we were talking about that in conjunction with how difficult is it to get rid of a stiff sometimes, and probably the most difficult place to do it is in the NBA, where the Heat have been trying to unload Jimmy Butler. And the complications are the type of which that not even the most genius of MIT graduates can figure out, especially with salary cap considerations and things like that. So it's a very highfalutin crowd. One of the guys that we see walking by as we're doing some interviews there is David Portnoy of Barstool Sports. Now, we all know that Portnoy is sending it in. He managed to make that giant score selling his business and then got it back for $1, and he's making substantial wagers. It was interesting to me. I mean, I guess you would love to be in this position where Portnoy walks by. He's not in his usual tattered T-shirt. He's wearing a very refined-looking suit. And he's got some, a fairly incredible babe that's sort of drafting in behind him, which I'm assuming was a woman that he was with. And then, and this has to be a glamorous position to be in. He had a guy that was carrying a very fancy attaché and leather bound, whatever. And I'm thinking, I guarantee you that's a guy with an attaché full of cash. Because we know Portnoy is sending in humongous bets, but how great would it be to get to the point in degenerate gambling stature where you actually have to have a guy like you're some sheik from Saudi Arabia that just walks behind you, a couple of feet behind, may even be serving a double as a bodyguard, security guard, and he is carrying, as if he was some Russian rabbi with an attaché full of diamonds that is handcuffed to his wrist, an attaché full of cash, so you can just reach in there, grab a bundle, and make your bets. But it was a good day out there. White Barrio was the winner. Short price there, 5-2. Not really too shabby on that horse. We figured to go off the favorite. There was a horse called Locked in there that was playing into an incredibly bad trend where at Gulfstream Park, mile and an eighth races, since they reconfigured the track some 30 some odd years ago, only 3 horses have won from the 11 post going a mile and an eighth. A very short run into the turn there. It's pretty tough. I mean, you're so badly compromised. Locked, who was, I believe, the post time favorite, was actually in the 10 post there, even though drew number 11 and was supposed to break from the 11 hole, but there was a scratch inside of him. So I guess that stat was not tested there, but nonetheless, White Barrio, the winner, and a very, very highfalutin looking crowd was there. They had a handicapping contest, 5 dimes to buy in. And it was not necessarily the kind of environment that I'm overwhelmingly comfortable in because, when you go to the track, you just want to slug down a few beers and have a good time. But a spectacular day out there in the transformation from the usual railbirds to these people that you would see in the suites at the Kentucky Derby. All right, a lot of fun being with you guys. Thanks to Mike Jones for joining us. We'll have all kinds of analysis on the Super Bowl, and we'll dive into some other sports as well. So stick with us. We'll join you again tomorrow. Thanks to the people at Bet Online, NoFilter.net, and Greenlight Ventures. I'm Jeff DeForrest. Catch you next time on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.